this happens every time that I'm hanging out with you. I'm thinking I should hit record the second you and I start talking backstage because it's always so good. We just solved the problems of the world before it was go time here, everyone. If you are a visionary or thought leader and you dream of being on stage or maybe even writing a book, sharing your story because you recognize, you know how powerful story is right now. Our stories are medicine. They are healing not only ourselves, but the entire planet. Then I am so happy that you are joining here today because step one in doing that is being around other people who are doing it. And my friend and guest and colleague today is somebody who is absolutely doing it, walking the walk. Corey, I'm so happy you're here, my friend. I feel like we've come up through the ranks together, and it has been so awesome to witness not only your success as an author. I mean, this book we're going to talk about today, I don't even know how many best-selling books you've written at this point. I've also lost track of how many TED Talks you've done at this point. You've also started a movement, a revolution, Blue Talks movement, and you've also become a father in the time that I've known you. And I just want to say I'm so happy you're here. Happy late Father's Day. And I think I'm feeling like even in this moment, a lot of my success and a lot of our colleagues, we have a lot of great friends moving in this space. Our success really compounds and expands and supports each other. And man, you have definitely been a leader in terms of what you're creating here on the planet. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So humbled.
Yeah. Happy Father's Day. How was Father's Day for you?
Thank you. It was good. In fact, it's funny when you say Happy Father's Day. I just literally got a text minutes ago from Shelly, who's my common law wife. So if you hear me say wife, yay. But sometimes I might slip into girlfriend. I just want to let you know they are the same person. So having said that, she just messaged me and said, Sebastian doesn't want to come for the drive to get AJ. Can I sneak him into your office? So he might technically end up being here in 8 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Who knows? Having said that, the first question about Father's Day, it was great. We did like what we usually do on the weekends. So one of the things that has been a big part of my life over the years, almost since we've known each other. So whenever, and I don't even know now timeline how long ago that is, but I feel like it's like 8 years, 9 years. And whenever I go back to then, Shelly and I were early together, like 6 months, a year, or whatever. And I did work weekends and some evenings. Mm-hmm. Today, that's a totally different scenario. The most I will do is every now and then check Messenger, but I don't load my computer like ever on the weekends or evenings. My computer, right now I'm in book launch mode, so I'm doing an interview at 7 tonight, but normally if I'm not in launch mode, it's all finished by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, go home, have supper, hang out with the kids. And if I had something I have to do, I'll do it, but I never even turn on the computer. And that's like 7 days a week almost. So that's been fascinating to watch because I didn't know that was possible. And a few people, I think even yourself, have said in the past, I don't know if we're allowed to say the S word.
We can say those words around here, my friend.
Okay.
We speak French fluently.
Okay, I just want to make sure. You've said it in the past, I think, and Kathy Duguay, who's in my mastermind, has said it in the past, that that you guys were fascinated by my ability to get shit done. And in fact, Kathy had said, you need to name that your book years ago. And I kind of wish I would have, because I've seen a book named that since. I've seen 2 books with similar names, but I literally was thinking about back then a productivity book, Getting Shit Done. Anyway, the reason to bring this up is because it blows my mind now that in 30 some hours a week, I can get done what I do, but also what used to take me 70 hours a week. So I'm still not fully answering the question. Yesterday, we went to a trampoline park, and we went to a trampoline park, and then we went and got ice cream for supper, and then we hung around the house a bit. So it was just kind of a traditional Sunday. I will say, I don't know if I shared this with you. I think I sent you a picture of this back then, but the trampoline park we're at, I saw it again yesterday. It's a weird thing to bring into the conversation. But they have these like styrofoam blocks that you build up.
Yes.
Do you remember me sending you a picture?
No.
Okay. I sent you a picture because some kid carved in the C word.
Oh, I do remember that.
And I
do remember that.
I said that was a while, like 2 years ago.
A while ago. Yeah,
and I just saw it again today. It hasn't left. Like this
you
is
saw that same block?
Yeah, and this is a kids park. So in other words, that's been rotating around there. And Sebastian, I think I told you at the time, said, "Yeah, what's that word mean?"
Yep, that is really a funny story, and that's nasty that has been around here. All right, we got to let everybody in on this story. Do you still have that picture? You don't have to do it now, but if you have that picture, come back and post it in the comments here so everybody can see it. It was really funny. Some kid carved the C word onto a block, and of course Corey's son found it and says, "Dad, what's this word mean?" Just one of the awesome moments of parenting that a lot of fathers miss because they don't prioritize and they don't feel the freedom or space or haven't created that or haven't given themselves permission or whatever the reason is, right? Still working through father wounds themselves. And that's one area where I know that you've worked personally. It's how we get such great success in our mission and our life purpose is doing the work on our own microcosm. And I can attest to you have done that work and you've healed so much of that father wound, and you get to show up as a father, not only for your kids, and you also sent me a picture of the badass basement you built for them, like the dream basement. I realized you're also doing that for entrepreneurs and storytellers and visionaries. And those of us who feel like, we weren't born into the right, maybe family lines or connection points to be able to have ease at being out there and being public and speaking. You found your own way, and you make that way for the everyman, which that's the leadership that's coming up on the planet right now, which is why it's so important, the work that you're doing, and particularly this new book that we get to talk about. So you mentioned this book, Getting Shit Done, which actually, let me pause for 1 second. Y'all who are here, everybody say hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Let's blow up some algorithms for a second here, because this is about to be an even better conversation as we get into this. Send some love likes, hearts across the screen. Just pretend like it's a pinball machine for a second and just like bam, 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 bam on there. All right. So we get a lot of us here in this space talking. All right. So Corey, we're going to talk about your new book today, The Enlightened Passenger. But you also mentioned this book, the Getting Shit Done book, which was a book that you didn't actually get done, interestingly enough, right? But it was a productivity book. And you do a lot of teaching and a lot of mentoring in the books how many books have you written now? How many is on your list?
Well, so it depends, and this is something when you were saying it, I've been struggling with this lately because it depends on how the context we give to it. So if we say what books was I involved with that were published that I wrote in, it's like approaching 40. But to be clear, some of those are anthology and publication books. So if we whittle it down, because I was just talking to somebody about this today, if we bring it right down, 5 of the books that I did were profile books. So it'd be like if I profiled Emily Harrison and 2 pages an article. So if I don't consider that like writing a book, because it's not like you know what I mean, scratch point A to point B book. If I go right down to that part, the answer is 3. But it's actually 38, but it's down to 3. One of them was a parable book I wrote years ago that I never sold. Years ago, I would have showed you the book, but it's called Standing Ovations from Every Customer. And it was a parable, fictional book, never sold a copy intentionally, because the idea with the book was to mail it to CEOs who would hire me as a speaker to teach what I taught in the book. So the first ever book that I fully wrote and sold was the Book of Why and How. And the day I launched it was the day the pandemic decided also to launch itself. So that was my competition, a worldwide pandemic that everybody's talking about. This is the first book I've ever had a full real launch for out of all those 38 books.
Well, this book is definitely incredibly special. I have witnessed you from behind the scenes working on it for some time and just pumping up everybody in your field, getting us all excited about it. What makes this book different than the other books that you've written?
There's a few different answers for that. And one thing I know when we get talking, I'll never come back to this one thing. So I want to say this one thing too.
Say it now. Get it out.
Something that changed my life, because you mentioned about fathers, parenting, that type of thing. And yes, I had some wounds in the sense that my father wasn't a big part of my life. But I'll tell you one defining moment, and it's before I had kids. But Shelly and I were literally, in fact, I think our first phone conversation ever was on this trip that I'm about to mention. But I went to Orlando, and I went to an event Tom Ziglar put on, which is Zig Ziglar's son. And we got talking about Zig and his way of living. And he shared the story about how Zig was a speaker like me, traveling all over. And at the time he was doing it, no cell phones, no pagers, no nothing. And he had like 5 or 6 kids at home. And he would travel. And he said, Tom would say he'd say bye to every one of us. And then he'd fly to wherever he's going, which could be 2 hours away. And then he'd call and say, put them all on, and then talk to each one of them once he got there. And he also said that he watched his father every day his entire life open the door for his mom, the car door. But what I'm getting at with that, Emily, is I don't know why because I wasn't a parent. It's weird that rocked my world. But when he said that, so what he said, to finish the story, he said that our father was on the road a lot, like 300 some days a year. So let's say he was home 40 days. He said he was only home 40 days, but while he was there, the way he was home made it feel like we had our father more than the person next door that didn't even look at their kids, that was home 365 days a year. And at that moment, I decided as a parent, that's who I want to be, because I knew I wanted to follow my purpose. I knew it would bring me on the road. I knew it would mean that there'd be times I wouldn't see them like other parents who are home every night, but I wanted it to be like they wouldn't know that. They wouldn't feel that when they grew up. So I just wanted to put a stamp on that before I move into the Enlightened Passenger, because I think as parents, the takeaway, and by the way, this is also a takeaway that also goes to the effect of how we show up everywhere. Like, in other words, are we all in everything we do, even if we don't have a lot of time to do it? So I hope that's a takeaway for people. If I move into the book, why it's different, and of course you can comment on what I just said, but I'll just move into the book and say why it's different, I think, than other books that I've written is, well, first of all, it's a fictional parable. Now, we just kind of, I guess, covered the fact that I did write one other one, but I never sold it. I never put it into the masses. It literally, the only way you could get it was invite only. I had to send you the book in the mail. And I mean, I only have like 4 copies of it myself. Like, it,
Ooh, so exclusive, Corey.
Yeah, maybe I'll send you a copy. Like, there's like, literally, I think I only ever printed like 5,000 or 3,000, and they're all mailed. So having said that, what's different is, first of all, it's a parable. And then what makes it even more different is it's the type of parable it is. So it's it's being compared to, and I'm going to step back and say, I'm not trying to compare myself to these books or these authors, but it's been compared to multiple times by people who knew these authors or read them often. Og Mandino, Celestine Prophecy, in terms of James's book, and The Alchemist. And even The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, to a lesser degree, by Robin Sharma. But those books is what it's being compared to. So it's different because almost all my other books were basically nonfiction how-to books. This is a fictional book where the lessons are buried in the story versus here's now. So as far it's not like a type book that says here's your 3 steps for whatever. Now, what we did do in the book, which was a decision at the end, is we add the lessons to the end of the chapter. Like, in other words, here's your takeaway, or here's what you could do. And then the character, Treb, the older character, says to Robert, are you ready for lesson 5? So we do number them, but it's done in more of a way. The reason we did it is because, and I talked to you about this to you off air, is because I was trying to also reach the spiritual skeptic. And I felt if you're a spiritual skeptic, and I'm talking about synchronicity, and you read the chapter afterward, you're like, that sounds great. What do I do? Just like the people that watched The Secret and said, okay, that sounds great. Now what do I do? I wanted to have so one of the things in the end of that chapter is start a synchronicity journal. Start writing it down. Tell the universe you want more of them. So I wanted to give people practical how-tos for the people especially that don't fully understand this yet, and it's all new to them.
Badass, my friend. I'm really excited about this. I haven't talked about this a lot on the air. Maybe never. And I know that I haven't shared it with you, but there's a specific pattern that I'm seeing coming in where the sacred texts, the religiously, I shouldn't even say religiously, I'll say spiritually inspired information that's coming in, and things that we can liken to the Bible or hieroglyphics on the walls in Egypt, like spiritual text. It's coming through in this way of parable form. And I am so excited that you're tapping into that. And of course you are. Of course we can compare you to the great writers that have brought us The Alchemist. And what are a couple of the others that you name? My brain's just going blank right now.
It's all good. Og Mandino was one of them. And
yes.
And when I said that just last week we did an interview event with Richard Paul Evans, who wrote the Christmas box, and he wrote the foreword for the book. And
Cool.
he never met Medino, but he shared the story about how he was at a mall and he was sitting across from this author, and the author had hardly anybody at his table. And he was only like 18 or 16, Richard was. And he's like, I really want to meet that author. I should meet that author. I should go. And then he never went, and he always regretted it. It was Augmendino. And back then it would be rare, very rare for nobody to be there. And I don't remember the context. I think he might have said like it was while he was setting up or something like that. But anyway, then we, on the same interview, we had Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Hansen. And Mark's the co-creator of Chicken Soup. And so Mark was friends with Augmendino. And so Mark said, Crystal and I read your book this weekend, and we love it so much because it's so much like Augie's writing. You know, so I said to Shelley, I said, this for me is a validation in a way, because now you have a guy who's written 46 times New York Times bestselling books, which is Richard. All of them like fictional books that people go nuts over, like people fangirl over. He's got like 600,000 people on his email list. And then you got Mark Victor Hansen, who sold 600 million books. And I think we can argue, now Mark's a marketer, but I think we can argue that both of them will be considered writers. And then James Redfield would be considered a writer. Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversation with God, would be considered a writer. Well, all four of them have endorsed this book. And so, Emily, the validation for me is I always thought at most, maybe I'm a best-selling author, meaning a marketer that can market a book after I've written it. Yeah. But I never, and Shelley didn't get this. She said, what? But I said, I never thought of myself as a writer. Like, to me, a writer is like Stephen King, Nora Roberts. That's a writer. And then you have marketers who write a decent or a good book, but are really good at selling their book. And I thought, okay, if of the two, I'm probably more on the marketing side. Well, to have those four icons in literature say, we like this book from a writing perspective, and it's a fictional book too, which helps. That I guess was a validation for me. And I say this, as you know, not lightly, because I don't try to do many me ink things. It's just that was a big moment for me of validation.
Man, well, I'm going to get you on this one because it's a moment of validation for me, because I've got some telepathy coming in and I'm writing down this question to ask you. And it's interesting because you kind of answered it already. It's related to that. Do I ever see myself as a writer? But I wrote down sacred scribe. Corey Poirier, do you see yourself as the sacred scribe that you are?
I guess I'm beginning to believe it's possible.
Way to go, my friend. High five. Well, I see it. I'll tell you, I see it from behind the scenes. And I know that's part of the human experience too, right? Is how we begin to see ourselves differently with humility, but to see the importance of the work. And I just want to reflect that to you. I see such incredible importance in your work. And we're going to talk a little bit more about just how valuable this book is, because it's not just a book purchase. When you do buy the book, there is a whole new timeline that comes along with this. But I have one more question that I wanted to ask you before we transition into that. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the title of this book is The Enlightened Passenger. Corey, what is an enlightened passenger to you?
So this is a fascinating question because it was intentional, the title. And I will tell you, Emily, little scoop that it's not, I mean, it's a scoop that really won't materialize for a while, but I've only shared this maybe on one or two other interviews about the book, but I've written the next two books. And the second one's called The Enlightened Muse, and the third one's called The Enlightened Writer. And the titles make sense with what the books are about. But having said that, The Enlightened Passenger, this is where it gets to me intriguing. So I wrote it so that it would be ambiguous. So what I mean is, when you say what is or who is the enlightened passenger, when you pick up the book, I want you to not know the answer. And I say that, I mean, I want you to have your own answer for that. So in the book, there's two characters, Robert and Treb. Robert is the young, arrogant business person who kind of thinks he knows it all, doesn't think he can learn anything from anybody new. Treb is the wise old passenger who ends up changing Robert's life on that flight. Now, the way the flight's set up is Robert makes good money, but he spends more than he makes. And he paid for the VIP or the first class seat next to him so that nobody be sitting next to him. He falls asleep for a little bit, wakes up, and Treb's sitting next to him with a big smile on his face. And basically he finds that Treb has been bumped up because the plane's full. And so that's kind of the set the stage. Now, here's where it gets to be intriguing. Is the enlightened passenger Treb because he's more enlightened already in the flight and hands the knowledge to Robert? Or is Robert the enlightened passenger because he's becoming more enlightened on the flight? Or are you the reader, the enlightened passenger,
chills everywhere
because you're along for the ride? Or if you bring the book to somebody else and say, you need to check out this book, are you the enlightened passenger because you bought the book along for the ride?
Woohoo! I love it. I get chill. I can't even stand it. That's so good. Yeah, I definitely heard that question. It felt like it came in from the field before we got on. Like, ask him what an enlightened passenger really is. And so I thought, okay, that's a good question. I'm so glad I asked you. That was an awesome answer. That's so
by the
good.
way. Yeah. I just thought of this as we were talking, and I know I can share this because, she gave me carte blanche to share it. But whenever I said the book ultimately is meant to be for everyone, so that would include somebody that's spiritual now, somebody that's not into spirituality at all, and somebody who is becoming. And one of the things that's kind of fascinating is I sent out an email last week, and the subject of the email was, "Do you believe in synchronicity?" Mm-hmm. And a speaker whose name is Lisa Demi was her name, and her actual reply was, "After reading your book, I do."
Wow, that's amazing.
So when I say that's who I want to reach, I want to reach somebody who, I mean, that for me, and I know we say this a lot as people that are kind of in the expert space, is if I just reach one person, then it'll be worth it. Well, I know it's cliche, but if she was the only person that ever replied and said, "You've now got me believing in synchronicity," there's people that go their whole life that believe in synchronicity that can never get another person to. So I digress to say that's kind of what my goal is.
Well, synchronicity is life-changing, especially when we learn how to work with it and follow it and let it be a guide that's leading us. It changes everything. So
absolutely. Good. And I'll answer one question that often I think is not asked, but I think people are wondering. So for those that, and again, I think a lot of people in your network and even in my network probably have heard the term synchronicity and maybe know what it is.
Yep.
But I don't want to assume everybody does. And also for those that do know, this might be a good reframe as well. But one of the things that James Redfield, who is really by a lot of people's estimation, the person that kind of made the word famous, he studied Carl Jung, and that's where he got it from. And like, he doesn't say he created the concept, but Celestine was the biggest book to ever talk about it for sure at that time. And so with synchronicity, what James says, he calls them meaningful coincidences.
Right.
I love that is because then you and I, and we wouldn't, but then you and I, if we both disagree with what they are, we don't have to argue anymore if it's a coincidence or not. I'm literally saying, Emily, if you think it's a coincidence, great, it is. But some have meaning and some don't. And the ones that have meaning are the ones we can label synchronicity. But you don't have to label it that. You can still call it a meaningful coincidence. So I love that reframe because then we can stop arguing over whether it exists or not. We can just say we all believe, like most of us believe in coincidence. Even the ones that think synchronicity is pseudoscience believe in coincidence. So let's say, okay, I believe in coincidence too. But what if there's meaning to some coincidences and then there's not to others to us?
Yep. Well, I mean, James Redfield and the Celestine prophecy is a meaningful coincidence and synchronicity in my life from you. When you told me that you knew him and that he'd written, I'm like, what? Because the Celestine prophecy was a lot of the anchoring inspiration to Mount Shasta. I mean, I read this book and I'm like, are you kidding me? Okay, I want to create this in real life. And that's basically what I've done in Mount Shasta is we're going to different vortex locations and we're downloading codes and collecting things that we've left behind for ourselves in other dimensions of the time-space continuum. And how cool, just how cool to really have that visceral connection to James through you. Blew my mind. All right, so I'm going to give a shout out to some people that are here. Corey, we want to hear, hey, Shell, baby, Joe Fox, say hi if you're here and you are joining us. Corey, we also want to hear from you about the book, and I'm going to put a link in here for everybody where you can buy the book. You can get the book. But like I said, it's not just a book. It's like an entire timeline change. What you have packaged together here for people, again, blew my mind with the level of generosity and value of what you've created for people over the years.
Well, so thank you and using NLP and thank you. And by the way, I never used to do that. Always used to say but. And then for whatever reason, once I finally got it in my head, I always do it now. I can't even say but anymore. I struggle with saying but. It's always and you know what? It also comes from improv, right? Yes, and.
Yes, and.
Which is both like NLP and improv. So yes, and what we've done, I guess, to kind of, because there's a couple of layers, and we offered so much with this, Emily, that I think it even makes it confusing for people as to what they're getting. So to separate it by two things, what we did is we set up buying the book. I you know me, I always feel it can't be just buy a book. Like there has to be something more to it. So like I felt, you know what, we need to have bonuses. We need to have something that people get in addition to the book. And so we set up 5 instant bonuses, which I think, you know, there's a lot of books that set up their launch like that. But what's different about this, again, is it's a fictional parable. I haven't seen a fictional parable ever set up with bonuses, basically. And so the first end is there's 5 instant bonuses that you get. But on the back end, and this is where the confusion comes in, but I'll say, think of it separately. In addition to that, I did multiple live events so far, and I have more coming up, that if you buy the book today, let's say, the live events coming up between now and the end of the month, you can attend those for free as well. So these are virtual events that we're doing. And you get the replays of the ones we've already done. So think of it 2 things. One's the instant 5 bonuses. The other ones are the live events that you can attend because you bought the book. So it kind of gives you a ticket for both. If I start with the live events, we did an event, as I mentioned, with Richard, Paul Evans, Mark Victor Hansen, and Crystal Hansen last Friday. So that's now up as a replay. We talked about them earlier. So synchronicity.
Oh, okay, wait. These kind of events that you have, like you just described, when somebody gets a book, you have 5 more of them coming up, and they get a virtual ticket to come to each of those events.
So the number, so we did 5 in total, and 5. 3 have been done, and 2 are coming up. And
so they get the 2 tickets, and then they get the replay. They can go back and visit the other ones.
Yeah, that they don't even know happened yet. So what I mean is, one of them is, which is kind of fascinating based on the conversation we just had. One is James Redfield and John Gray. So I did one with the 2 of them. So you get access to that. Another one is Mark Victor Hansen and, like I say, Crystal and Richard Paul Evans. So that's done. You get access to that. The third one happened Friday, just this past Friday. And this is so awesome to me. This is fun for me. Brian Austin Green from 90210 and Anger Management.
I saw that. And Aaron's spelling. Randy Spelling. Yes.
Aaron's son is Tori's brother. And then Sharna Burgess, who's from Dancing with the Stars, and Brian's wife. So we did this last Friday. So that one's already exists. And it's kind of, I mean, I don't have to go into all the detail of what we did in each of those, but I can say that, like with Richard and Mark, we really talked about books and stuff and bringing these projects to life, these passion projects. And Randy, Brian and Sharna and I talked about, like, their podcast is called Oldish. So we talked about like parenting and relationships and setting goals, and they have 5 kids. How do you do that with 5 kids? And
right.
James and John, of course, we talked more about, things that are more spiritual in nature, like synchronicity and how you can tie that into writing a book and all that kind of stuff. So upcoming, we have, this is the biggest one, and you know about this because you've been a part of it, is we have the virtual boot camp coming up. So normally we do this twice a year. We've done it 3 times a year. This year this is the first time, and we're halfway through the year. Basically, it's a 3-day boot camp where you learn how to speak, write, interview, podcast, get to access to cool experts, laser coaching, a whole bunch of stuff. It's a 3-day event. It's actually this coming weekend, so I know it's short notice, 21st to the 23rd, but it's free, and you can come and go as needed. So again, you buy the book. We'll literally be sending you a link for that. And then the last event coming up is Ken Honda and Janet Atwood. So Ken Honda from Mind Valley and Happy Money, and Janet Atwood wrote The Passion Test. And so they're coming up on the 27th. And then, not to add more to it, but we're going to be doing book clubs as well after the book's launched. And the idea is I want to bring a couple of big names to get you to show up. But I want you to, it's such a small book, I want to kind of convince you it makes sense to read the book before you come. So I will tell you, this is kind of a strategy around getting more people to read the book. We're going to do a big contest at the end and big draws for if you answer 5 things about the book. And then we're also going to do 2 book clubs. So technically, you actually get 7 events.
Corey, you don't do anything anymore without like creating a whole revolution, friend. Because what I see here is once you buy this book, we really get to immerse in your world and your community, which includes master level artists who are showing up and creating and changing our planet in this really powerful way. Like you've built the insider for the everyman to be a part of this community through this book. This is you're so smart. You're a genius. You're a genius.
Thank you, my friend. I so appreciate you. And so that, I mean, that's all the after, like that's the after you buy the book, here's what you can access. But then the instant bonuses are more stuff from me. So one is, and even though you don't see it as much maybe in the spiritual world, but as you know, in the 3D world, what we call it,
yeah,
a lot. But the TEDx, everybody, like I sent an email today and said, who wants to land at TEDx? Whose dream is to land at TEDx? I think I've had 190 responses today.
Yeah,
to that one question. A lot of people want to land it. So because of that, one of the Instant 5 bonuses is a 90-minute training around how we've helped a lot of people land their TEDx. You wouldn't know this because we haven't talked about it in a while, but we're over 100 now. People that we've,
I'm not surprised.
Clients that have landed their TEDx. I've done 5 and using the same system. So basically it's a pre-recorded class, but it's literally our training for revealing the whole system.
This system, by the way, I just want to say something about this system because I've studied this system and I've used so many of these techniques in so many different ways of my life. And there was one particular manifestation I had. It might have been 2023, but it was to make a connection into Gaia. And of course, energetically, I have my own ways that I tap in and do that. And we also have to take action in the physical world. And so into my field comes this reminder of stuff I've learned from Corey Poirier about how to really authentically do your homework and connect with these people in a smart way that all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, it makes sense. Of course I can connect to anyone here on the planet, right? And Corey, within 6 months, I was sitting in a restaurant with an executive producer of Gaia. So these techniques work. Yes, go get your TEDx talk. We want TEDx talk because this is medicine that changes the planet, and use it to take down every other aspect of your life where you want to manifest and create and you want the physical steps in the real world that you need to do. This guy's got them. Okay, keep going.
Well, thank you. And I want to ask you, I don't know why, again, like you said, questions pop into our head. I'm curious now, have you ever been, I don't think you have yet. I know you've been on Cryam, which is huge. You've been on Gaia. Yeah. Have you been on George Norrie's show yet?
No, I have not. I have a contact into George Norrie though.
Because you need to be on that show. I just totally got this energy vibe that you need to be on that show, and it's right up your alley. And it's the I was at an event with Richard Paul Evans, the writers retreat, and the guy that was there wrote this book here. The Light After Death, and literally his story is, I don't remember the exact timeline, but it says an hour later he came back from death. He was pronounced dead, you know, the whole works, like everything said he was dead, but he said they only found him 2 days later. So he was dead a lot longer than clinically they say he was dead. Whoa. So like, he has, like, not many people can say they know what happens on the other side, but I don't know anybody that's been dead that long. Anyway, the point I'm getting up is he was on the George Norrie show, and him and I were talking about it, and it's like the #1 highest rated after 12 o'clock show in North America, if not the world. You need to be on the show, is all I'm saying. Okay.
Well, I know how to figure that out because you've taught me the ways to reverse engineer that, my friend. So
I just wanted to put it out there to remind you, you need to be on that show. And then secondly, and he's on Gaia, which is, by the way, what made me think of that. He has his own Gaia show now too.
Yes.
That's what made me think of it. So the other side, I was talking about the bonuses. So then we also have a top 10 insights guide. So because I've done it, this is another side of my life, but because I've done thousands of interviews with thought leaders, people always ask me, what's the number, when I get on interviews, that's the most common question I get is, what's the #1 most common thing they share? What's the biggest lesson you've learned from these influencers? So I decided to put together a PDF, which is the top 10 insights. And it's basically their photo and their words. So like if it was Lisa Nichols, it's Lisa Nichols talking about how we need to fill our cup to the point where it's overflowing before we give to somebody else, which goes counter to what we always hear, which is fill from your cup when it's full. What she says is, no, if you're 100% because it's finally full, as soon as you start filling it, now you're down to 90, 80, 70. No. You wait till it's overflowing into a saucer. Now it's a metaphor, but it's good because it makes us think about the fact that are we just finally getting ourselves up again, and then we start giving away. And so it's those kind of insights. So you get 10 of those, you get access to a digital book of mine, you get access to a talk I did at, I want to throw it out and say I think it was Oxford, but a talk I did, I believe at Oxford, that I talked about how Disney, Apple, and all these companies can charge more, so that we can use the same 5 things to be able to charge more for ourselves and increase our own worth. And then finally, the 5th one is an interview series sent in by Natalie Ledwell and Patrick Ledwell of Mind Movies, which is like I'll call it vision boards that are on video. And they created it right after The Secret. And it's actually them talking about how to set goals, how to manifest. But what's really neat is they started the company after they got divorced. So it's them talking about how they actually run, still to this day, a company together as, what do they call it? An uncoupled couple.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
So you get all those bonuses too.
Yeah, those last 2, I'm like, yep. I want those. Yeah.
Well, and the book is also $16.95, which was kind of cool. Like it's a small pocket book, so it's pretty, it's tiny intentionally. And because of that, my publisher said, I think we can get the price down to whatever he said, $17.50. What do you think? I said, if you can put it lower, put it lower. So we got it down to $16.95 too. So it's, people are used to paying $20 a book, so it's even a little less now too.
Yeah. Oh man, Corey, this is I'm feeling. Do you remember so much energy coming in? It's the energy of the highest timeline of this book. Do you remember The Artist's Way?
The Artist's Way. How do I know that? Is that a book?
Yeah, it's a book. It was written by Julia Cameron, I believe, and it swept my field when I was in Hollywood. It was really popular, and a lot of actors did it because it helped us to excavate aspects that keep us from being really connected to our soul, and synchronicity was a huge part of it. And it's a workbook style that you work through. Not parable, but has a workbook influence. What I'm hearing is that your book is going to become like cult classic like that. And I'm seeing all of these like clubs and like you talked about the book club, but communities forming all over the place. I mean, by the time this information got to me, Julia Cameron wasn't teaching it anymore. We were at the Bodhi Tree, which was a really fancy, swanky spiritual bookshop in LA with all of the other spiritual woos who wanted to learn this stuff, right? And the place was packed. And it was a 6-week class, and we were into it. And some of the synchronicities that happened in my life while I was doing that changed me forever. My hunch is the Enlightened Passenger is the next one of those for our society. That's what I'm feeling.
Well, I'm humbled because I know you. I trust your judgment. I know and so it gives me the confidence to keep pushing the book, because that's the part that people don't necessarily realize when it comes to books is yes, books do some books build a momentum that's hard to stop, but what a lot of people don't see, and I didn't see it either, to be honest, whenever I was growing up, but how much work the author has to do to push the boulder up the hill before it goes down on its own. So like people didn't see James driving around with his wife with 2,000 books in the back of their trunk, handing them out. People didn't see Richard Paul Evans. He was telling me that like at the event we were at, that his first big book event, they sat him in the LGT. Okay, I'm going to say it's
LGBTQ.
Yes, LGBT. I knew I was mixing up one of the letters. He was in that section in the book signing, and he said, and the only reason that was brought up is because he said across from him was a picture of a naked cowboy with all his junk hanging out, and that's where he was signing his book, is right in front of the naked cowboy. And his book is a Christmas book for kids. It's not a children's book, but it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's a Christmas book for families and husbands and wives to read. And it's about this magical moment. And what I'm saying is that was one of his first book signings. And he said that he was at another signing and they were saying that, he said, where are all the people? Because he paid a lot of money and that's the thing, he had to pay to get there. And he paid a lot of money to show his book at this big book event. And he was like trying to show it around and he couldn't find where all the people were. And he asked someone, and they said, oh, they're out in the hall with all the authors. And he's like, I paid to be here. I thought I was an author. So anyway, he goes out in the hall and he said, like both sides of the room was tables. And it was like, he didn't name the names, but it'd be like Nora Roberts, Stephen King, like all of them. And he's like, well, how am I ever going to sell my book here when they're all signing up and gifting books for free?
Yeah.
So he saw one empty seat and a bottle of water. So somebody must have went to the bathroom. So he just went and sat in the seat, pulled his books out and started signing them. And he said the lady came up. She was like, sir, I need to talk to you or whatever. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry I'm late. And she worked there, right? She was going to kick him out. And then she looked at him and he said he had like puppy dog eyes. And she said, sir, can I get you some water? Anyway, she let him stay. He signed the books. The next year, he was the headliner. When he came in, it was his big picture. And he said, do you remember me? And she said, no. And he said, I was here last year and I took the seat. And like that was his, I took the seat. And she said, oh yeah. She said, I remember that now. She said, you're a bold little guy. And she said, I don't know why I was ready to come and drag you out and tell them to come and drag you out. But she said, I looked at your face and you just looked like you needed somebody to help you. Anyway, and that was his journey, right? I bring this up to say it all starts with pushing a boulder up a hill.
Yeah. I love it. All right. Well, I'm in. I'll make my order right now, everybody. We want to support you. We want to be a part of this mission. Guys, I'm leaving the link right here. Oh, shit. That's not the right link.
Oops.
That's the StreamYard link that I meant to send you.
Everybody's like, I'm rejoining the same thing. Wait a minute.
Wait, sorry, guys. I totally biffed that. I thought I had it already, and I did.
Yeah, but the thing is, Em, that's what people love about you. You're so authentic.
I know. Okay,
you can do this and nobody judges it.
I'm going to buy this right here with you all right now. Seriously. Okay.
I have one question for you before we.
Talk on it. Okay. Sorry. I haven't fixed the problem yet. Hang on. Okay.
That's the best.
What is with this? Okay. Copy. StreamYard. Okay, guys.
These are the moments that don't happen when you're perfect, Em. That's what I like. Meaning, like when everything doesn't go perfect, it makes it. People were there when they saw when Emily kept sending them back to StreamYard in a loop, like they're in a vortex, going, "How come I can't get out of this vortex?" I have a question for you.
Okay.
From Hollywood. I know we're closing things down, but just as a question, one of the things I noticed the other day on Wikipedia pages and on Julia Cameron's page, which is why I'm asking this question, because of course, you know me, I went there to her page, and why do all the people in Hollywood have photos up from when they were like 18 or 20? Like her photo looks like it's from 35, 40 years ago or from the 80s. And I noticed like there's a lot of actors who are still alive and their Wikipedia page is them from 1951. I'm just wondering, do you know, is that a thing? Like, is there a reason why that happens?
Yeah, well, because when we're relevant, that's when people, whoever these Wikipedia writers are writing the articles. Like, we don't write those and submit. We can submit information to change the article. But like for me at this point, I've got so much shit to do, Corey. There's the S word again. Writing that Wikipedia article and proving that I am who I say I am and asking them to put up another picture of me is just not on my priority list. But I think that's why it happens, is because they're created during a certain time of relevance, and then it exists in digital media for a long time. But you can, if you do have time or you have an assistant that will help you out with this, you can get those things updated.
Well, I'm wondering though, even on their website, so Julia on her website has a picture that looks like it from when she wrote the book versus today.
Well, dude, you talk about George Norrie. George Norrie, I was just at the Contact in the Desert with him, and I'm noticing, I'm like, man, all of these pictures of George have to be of like 40 years ago, and he's an icon. Like, let him hold the space where he is now. He's an icon.
I guess that's my point, is that when I go to discover somebody, I'd love to be able to see them today, whatever today is. But so it's just like, it's like when you see a picture and it's from the 80s, you can tell it's from the 80s. So I'm just always curious. I mean, to your point, I think probably what it is that's when somebody, like when she wrote that iconic book, that's how people knew her. Yeah. So if you go discover her, I guess they probably think branding wise, it makes sense to be tied to what she looked like when the book was out. Mm-hmm. I was just curious. I just know if there was a Hollywood thing I missed out on, or.
Yep. Any other Hollywood behind the scenes you got for me?
Well, I can share a Hollywood behind the scene.
Do it, because this is your interview.
Well, no, I only say that because as soon as I think of Hollywood, this speaks to me. But I don't know if I shared this with you. I'm sure I must have. I might even sent you a picture. I'm not sure. But so for me, growing up in the 80s, as a kid of the 80s, I was into hair metal, hair rock, whatever you want to call it, glam bands. But I was into the 80s hard rock scene. And most of that generated from, what years were you in Hollywood?
I graduated high school in 95 and then went to college for 2 years before I quit and moved to LA. So that was 1997. And then I was there for 20 years. So 1997 to 2007 to 2017, 2018 is when I moved to Reno.
Okay. So I was just thinking timeline. So the Sunset Strip obviously was still relevant then. I mean, it still is now. And it is still absolutely relevant now. I mean, it's iconic. But the Sunset Strip growing up as a kid was like, it was like, what do you call it? Like the fountain of youth. Like, I don't mean it made you younger. I just mean that's how iconic it was to me. It was just like this mystical place that didn't really exist, but everybody pretended it existed. Like, so I was into like Motley Crue, Poison, all these bands, and they owned the Sunset Strip in the early 80s. And so for me, it was always just to set foot in the Sunset Strip, like, will change my life, like that kind of thing. And meanwhile, then you go there, and a lot of the iconic clubs, half are still there, but some aren't. And anyway, so for me, a big thing was always just to be able to sit in one of those clubs. And so my Hollywood moment recently was I'd say a little over a year ago. We did our event at UCLA. Well, that's kind of iconic too, to be able to do an event at UCLA. But before that, I had an interview scheduled with, I think you know who Kent Speakman is.
Yes, I do know who Kent Speakman is.
Okay, so from Connect TV. So Kent and I had put an interview together. I did 3 interviews that day. And the first one was at the Troubadour. Do you remember the Troubadour?
Yeah, my dear friend played there so many times. Yes.
So it's iconic. In fact,
iconic.
Just a year before we went there, Guns N' Roses did their kind of "We're Not Dead Yet" tour. They announced they do it at one place, and they literally, Guns N' Roses played at this place that holds like 300 people or 200 some people, but they have no seats, which I think that's iconic. When you can have no doorbell, by the way, there's no doorbell, no seats except for like 6 around the bar, and you can fill the place every week. So that's an iconic place to me. And I got to interview an iconic guy at that place. You may have heard of him. His name is Tommy Chong. He's from a little comic duo called Cheech and Chong. And so about a year ago, that was my fanboy moment, to be able to go to the Troubadour, interview Tommy Chong in the front bar. The Troubadour was closed at the time, but open for us. And then Tommy saying, "Yeah, we got a picture up here somewhere." And I look over, and it's him and Cheech from like the 60s. They probably put it up there then. And now I'm interviewing the guy at 84, telling the stories about what they did in the Troubadour back then. That's a Hollywood moment for me.
And what an iconic legacy that you are leaving for your boys. You just paving the way for them to step into greatness. Like, what are some of the influences that you see based on like your career and your mission? How do you see that influencing your boys? Tell us some personal family stories.
I think, well, so we have 2 boys, and Sebastian is the older of the 2. Both of them, well, more so him. I don't know. I'm sort of not up with all the terms, but like crystal child, or like he's like
crystal, crystal in children, or a crystal child. Yeah, for sure.
He's very empathic. Very intuitive. Like, he'll say like, that person's sad. Like, he knows that stuff. He just somehow knows it. And very, like, he's not 7 yet. And last night he said to Shelly, he goes, "You know what a tsunami is?" And then he explained it. He's 6. So anyway, but where I see it maybe showing in him is that he wants to be a YouTuber, for instance. And he's been asking since he was 4.5, I think, or 5. And Shelly said, "When you're 7, we'll probably do it." So he's 7 in like a month. From a month and 2 days from now, he's 7, and he's like all in. Like, he's like,
I feel it. Yeah, I'm like tapping into his storyline, his conscious. Holy cow, he's really good, Corey.
So I think him. So this is why I say that. When you ask how I see it manifesting, is he sees me every day at an office doing what I love, and so I think that gives him permission to say, "I want to do what I love." And what's really funny about that, of the funny part to that, is yesterday Shelly said, "What does Daddy do for a living?" So she, because it was Father's Day, she said, "How many CDs does Daddy have? How many books does he have?" And so one of them, she said, "What does Daddy do for a living?" And I feel bad saying what he said. He goes, "I don't know." And then she said, "Well, just think about it. You go to his office every now and then. You hang out there. What do you think he does?" He said, "I think he tells people what to do." So I guess that's his way of saying an entrepreneur. I don't know, because he tells people what to do. All I know is he doesn't listen to anybody else. That's what he said.
Wow.
And I thought that was interesting from a kid's perspective. And then Shelly said, "Well, like he has a YouTube channel and we do videos and all." He goes, "Yeah, I've seen him talk and I know he speaks and stuff like that." But he said he still tells people what to do, doesn't he? And by the way, that for whatever reason reminds me of when I sent you the picture of my hand tattoo.
Yeah.
I don't remember what you said, but so anyway, that's that. When you asked about him, that's my thinking.
That's cool. Yeah. You answer to nobody. Once you have those tattoos on your hands, that's really, it's a statement of freedom for sure.
Yeah. You said it in a much more graphic way. Whenever you, I think that was like, I mean, it's not bad. You said something like that's a symbol to me that you're an entrepreneur who could say to people, "I don't give an F what you think."
Yeah.
About me, how I look or whatever. It was something like that. But it was really rock star-ish how you described it. But what I'm saying is that's how I think he sees us. Like he was there when we got these tattoos from Corey Miller from LA Inc. And he gets to see that. And I think he sees we get to make our own choices. We get to choose to do what we want to do. He sees those things. He sees that we get to travel and see some of the world. Like we're living what he would say is, or what I would say, I guess, is on purpose, but he gets to see that we're doing that. Now, AJ is too young, I think, still. He's fully not there yet.
Well, he's being programmed by the environment around him, and this culture that you're describing, that you're creating normalcy around something that for a while, like we were rebels, and breaking that mold. And it's so cool. Aaron says, grateful for all the lessons and knowledge from all seen and unseen that contributed to this conversation. Yay, Aaron, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, Corey, welcome to the club of rock stars. Corey will totally rock your world. Anybody have any questions for Corey? I dominated the time. I just talked to you the whole time and asked you questions and said, "Tell me this story, Corey. Tell me."
No worries. And I didn't know how long we'd be on, so I was just like, I'm just going to go with whatever flow is.
I forgot to ask you how long you had to, but we'll wrap it up here at the top of the hour. But if anybody has any questions that they want to ask Corey, feel free to type them in now. Otherwise, you're just going to get to sit here with me and my bud as we keep riffing and talking about
questions for Sebastian, because he just walked in.
Right on. He's here.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was telling them that we asked, I'm on live, but she said, Emily, I'm on with Emily, and she was saying, what kind of lessons do you think are being imparted on your children? And I said, well, Shelly asked yesterday what I do for a living, and Sebastian said, I think he tells people what to do. So I said, I think that sums up an entrepreneur. So anyway, yeah, he's quiet.
That's cool. I'm glad that he's here. I'm excited for what he will potentially share on his YouTube channel and his experience, because that tsunami stuff that came in was big, Corey. You're right about him being in Crystal.
Oh, so I'm now in the middle of an actual real outside this conversation. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So the tsunami thing that he said yesterday was pretty powerful. I'm kind of including him by saying that. We're promoting his YouTube channel.
Hi, Shelly. I love you.
And he even knows what addiction is.
Seriously.
Addiction. Addiction. I was thinking like diction. Like diction.
I asked him what it meant if somebody's addicted, and he said it's when somebody likes something too much.
He's gonna rip a hole in this time-space continuum. The what he's learned from the two of you and who he is, like, look out for this child. Can we pre-sign up? Can we pre-subscribe to his channel, please? Let us know.
Okay, we're trying to get it set up in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Well, we are all in here to be part of the Poirier bigger bunch. I'm super excited. Like I said, I'm seriously, now that I have the right link up there, I'm buying the book right now, everybody. I suggest that you do too.
Thank you.
Or what last stories or comments do you want to tell us while we're all buying your book?
Well, I would say one of the things that I think is so important in life, and it took me a long time to discover it, is the importance of living on purpose. So I, oh, okay. I think Shelly's trying to get a vote going as a name for his channel. But yeah, living on purpose, I think, is the one thing that changed everything for me. I was thinking about it earlier today when somebody asked me, what's your lessons for living a fulfilling life? And I said, for me, everything changed when I understood that if I could find a passion and then I started acting on that passion daily, eventually my purpose would reveal itself.
Yeah.
You've heard me say it before. I call it vitamin P. When you're living on purpose, I feel you're taking vitamin P, and it's a vitamin you can't buy in any store, but might be the most important one you ever take. So it's metaphorical, but basically it's saying when you live on purpose, in my experience, Emily, then everything changes. You're sick less often, you're happier, people love having conversations with you. Like, it's truly the vitamin you can't buy anywhere, but you need to take it. So if I could impart one thing on people here, I would say, whatever it takes. And I mean, there's exercises. We have exercises in my other book and stuff. There's ways to do it, but whatever it takes, you need to figure out what your passion is. And, and as you start living in your passion for a while, the purpose will reveal itself. So I want to clarify one thing on that, Emily, because I think a lot of people struggle where they go, okay, I don't know what meaning is. I don't know why I'm here. Okay, I need to figure that out. And I think that's too big of a jump for most people. I think in my experience, most people I've worked with had to find a passion first, and the passion became the gateway for purpose. So what I mean is, to me, passion is what you do. So passion is if you do podcasts, you do a show like this, you do speaking, you're in a magazine. Purpose is why you're doing it, what it's for the world. And I think you have to actually find the passion first, and then the purpose will reveal itself. So
that feels accurate to me. I mean, when I look back on how my timeline shifted from Hollywood into what I'm doing now, this new passion like came alive in me. And I did know that it was going to be big, and I knew that I was going to be showing up to a very grand part of myself. Like I always see myself showing up playing big in that way. And I had a feeling that it was going to look like that. But I didn't know the specifics until I really got into pursuing the passion of it. But the more wholeheartedly I pursued the passion, the faster and the clarity came. And it did come really quickly for me. It didn't take long for me to recognize, okay, yep, bam, this is the mission. Here we go. Let's rock this. And it didn't get good. I say get good. Like, as you know, what I'm referring to is that it was still really freaking bumpy along those lines, because I had already made that alignment when I had met you, and I wanted to come train with you. I wanted to train one-on-one with you in this TEDx mentorship that you had. And the truth is, I couldn't afford it. And not only could I not afford it, but I had to cancel the meeting with you where I was going to tell you that I couldn't afford it. I thought I was going to be able to sign up, but the money went somewhere else. I'm like, fuck, I got to tell Corey. And then after this meeting, I got to go to the food stamp office. And that was my real life at that point in time. And you gave me the encouragement. You said, hang in there. I'm going to be running it again. You're going to be in the next one. And you were right. I was in the next one.
Yeah. I mean, that story always gives me goosebumps because of how it's also how far I've watched you come as well. And, I saw I think it was photos, might've been video, but I think it was photos you put up from the Conscious Life Expo. And I was like, yay. Like, I was just like cheering from the sidelines. And, when you came to our event at Harvard and spoke at Harvard, I was like, yay, on the sidelines. I've been watching both from afar and up close, and it's been amazing. Like, it's been like, just to watch you expand, it's been mind blowing, really. And I have to add to, just a side note, but it'll keep me honest on it. We're about to launch season 2 of the Enlightened Passenger show. So whenever I launched the book, I launched this podcast, and I thought it was going to be a short run show. And I'm like, I saw this book called The Road Back to You that did it. I think that's what it's called. And it's the Enneagrams. And it was this book launch. And they only put out like 12 or 15 episodes ever in 2017, and they still are on the charts. It was fascinating because it was like, they used the podcast to launch the book, and it did a great job. So I was like, I'm going to do that. And the problem I ran into is I thought I was going to self-publish a book. I thought it'd be out soon. So I launched this podcast, and all of a sudden there's no book. And then all of a sudden I knew I was going to be releasing with a publisher, so I can't even pre-order sell it yet at the time. So I did this season, and the plan was this show is going to be short run, 15 episodes. Here's the problem. It's a 15-minute promise. The promise we make is 15 minutes every episode. And because of that, I was all of a sudden getting big names I couldn't get before. So like I had Deepak Chopra on, Ken Honda on, and all of a sudden, Emily, I'm like, how can I stop a show where I'm getting the people on that I always wanted to get on? And so what happened is we finished it as a season 1. So if you go now on YouTube or podcasting, there's season 1. Season 2 right now is about to hit. We're about to start putting out episodes daily. 2 interviews I have coming up. One's with, I think with Corey Miller from LA Inc. Another's with Jeff Walker, the internet marketer guy. But we already have a bunch recorded. So Tommy Chong hasn't been interviewed yet, or released yet, rather. That's coming out. Dave Hester from Storage Wars, the Yup guy, that's coming out. Brian Austin Green, the one we did the other day, the 3 of them, that's coming out. And so I have a whole season coming out that I'm so pumped about. The reason I bring all this up is I want to make sure, keep me honest on this, I want to make sure you and Rosalind, one other person in my community, I want to make sure the 2 of you guys are both on season 2.
Okay, Roz, we're going to make sure to break down this guy's door and get on it. Actually, we probably just have to tell Heidi.
Yeah, probably, maybe. But if I say, see, the thing is, if I say it, then it's too late now. I've said it.
Now it's out there.
Yeah.
So we will definitely keep you honest. But,
I mean, you guys, you gals are really knocking it out of the park. And I really think, that's the kind of way we can help you shine is to try to bring as much of a light to you both. I'm saying you and Rosalind, but to bring a light to you guys because you guys are crushing it. And you guys are, like you said, you guys are exploding. And I think people are just discovering it now. You guys have been reaching a lot of people for a long time, but you're exploding. And I think we have to do everything we can to make sure that keeps happening.
Yeah, I love Roz too. There's just this beautiful family that you have created and that you draw to you. And when we all travel together and we come and we speak at your events and we have times to bond, it's just a really powerful synergy that obviously has, impact in all of our lives because you could pick any one of us and take a look at what's happened over the course of the last years and where we're going and where our trajectory is. And we're all on the path of destiny together, aren't we, my friend?
We are, and I know our time is up, but I'll say what thing that was fascinating to me too was when we went to the Miami event. This is how much of a rock star Emily is. I was working with 2 separate people. One was one of the people we invited to speak at the event, one of the influencers, and another one was one of our clients who both became Emily's clients as a result of relationships built on that at that event. And that blew my mind because I only found out about 9-10 months later. I was like, oh, you're working with Emily? Oh my gosh, wow, you're working with Emily? They had no idea. So but that's a credit to you because, obviously they saw something in you. I mean, it's not like what you're offering is $45, and so they saw a big value in you and jumped in. And I thought that was amazing. So I think that speaks to what you said about building a community where it's a family and it's not. One of the things I always struggled with whenever I would go to certain platforms and be involved is everybody would just be like, high five, nice to know you, see you later, as soon as it was done. And I didn't want that. And I will say, we continue to see that it's become more, I think, of a family. And Shelly and I have kind of loosely named it the Army of Love. And so we'll see where that goes from here. But you are a big part of that. So thank you for being you.
Cool. My pleasure. Well, I'm going to be getting my book soon. I'm going to be bringing it in September when I see you in person and hang out with you. And I want you to sign it for me.
What? Okay. Well,
you just forgot. You forgot the billboard in Times Square.
No, I didn't forget that. The book part. It's the book part you're throwing me with.
No, I just bought it. I'm saying I'm going to bring my book with, and I want you to sign it.
Deal. Okay. Deal.
Yes.
In fact, I'll bring a second one and I'll sign that one too for you. What I thought you meant was that you have a book coming out that you didn't tell me about.
Oh, no, not
you're going to have in your hand in September. That's what. So sorry, that threw me off. I know you're coming to New York. I know about the billboard. I know that you can bring my book. I'll bring extra copies of my book. I just thought you blew my mind and you had a book written that was done that you're putting out that you didn't tell me about.
No, not yet. But I loved your reaction. That kind of makes me want to get it out there.
Yeah, you got it.
Right.
Let me know when you're ready.
All right. I have loved this time with you. Thanks for hanging out here with us. Thank you for putting together such an amazing opportunity for everybody. Guys, get your book. Come be a part of the Army of Love. Hang out with Poirier and family and friends. It's a good place to be. All right, my friend. Good to see you.
Thank you, my
soon.
friend. Till
All
next
right.
time, everybody.
All right. Bye.